Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Mr. Max streaming to you from the Abyss to talk today about the Dark Soul role playing game. So, in case you didn't know, which if you're familiar with this channel, you would know, I love Dark Soul. I'm a big fan of the video game. The first one and third one, I like both a lot. The second one, not so much. That's a different story. But even though I've played some Dark Soul on stream this last week, so you can tell I'm not really good at it. I'm very rusty, but I still love those games. And if you do like a Dark Soul team game, I'm probably gonna get it. I got the board game, the Dark Soul board game. I got the Dark Soul card game, and now I got the Dark Soul RPG. And to be I knew before getting in that the Dark Soul RPG use the D&D 5e engine. So my expectations were very low. I'm not a hater of 5e. I don't think it's the worst system out there. It got its flaws, but it's a functional system. But it's absolutely a weird match for a Dark Soul video game. Dark Soul is known for being difficult, for being challenging, and for you dying a lot. 5e is known for the opposite. So, and Dark Soul is not a class-based game. You do select a class, but that just affects your starting level and starting attribute. But then you can level up however you want. And also Dark Soul kind of have those RPG element with their own stat, which are vitality, strength, agility, endurance, intelligence, faith, and the most important of all, resistance. That's the first one you should level up to 99 before you put any point anywhere else. So now, going with the basic 6 stat from D&D, already you're taking a departure from the game. I'm not saying it should be a 1-to-1 to the game, but maybe that's something that's worth preserving if you want to preserve the feel, if you want to try to get this game to people that like the video game. And also, oftentimes when you try to do an IP game for a movie or TV show, stuff like that, you often want a more cinematic system. But Dark Soul is one of those cases that could absolutely have used a more crunchy system, because Dark Soul is an action game, but it's a thinking man action game where you have those committed attack that are very weighty. You got a lot of telegraph, and I think a good system for Dark Soul should have where the role of chances of luck should have been mitigated quite a bit. It should have been a lot about resource management. It should have been some push your luck, because in Dark Soul that's a big thing of it. Yeah, you get punished if you're being greedy. So I think that's one thing that we should have seen to it. We should have seen some stuff like dodge rolling. That's a big part of Dark Soul. Oftentimes people were now we talk about soul-like game. When we try to define what a soul-like game is, well, stamina management is part of it. Dodge rolling is often part of it. Those committed slow attack is part of it. We should have seen that in the role-playing game in some form, and having a fast, a mid, or a heavy, a fat roll, having some parry. That are things that are very recognizable in Dark Soul that would have been good to see in a Dark Soul role-playing game, but it's not there in the 5e engine. Dark Soul is a lot about setting up for a strike, waiting for the opening and then you strike. It's not about you cannot play Dark Soul with button mashing, or you're gonna die 20 times like I did. My timing was off, but it's a lot about that. You wait for the opportunity, you set yourself up, then you do one strike and you back off. If you try to be greedy, you're gonna get punished. So that should have been a big part of the role-playing game. Threat range, knowing if you're having those big monsters that can threaten you from afar. not only always from 5 feet or maybe 10 feet. Make it a little more granular so you can and yourself having a different threat range with different weapon. That's a big part. Like I like to play with the Zweihander because it's a big threat range. But then when you get in corridor, sometimes it hit on a column and you cannot strike. So that's something also that even worse with the Albert. That's something that maybe should have been translated in a role playing game. So definitely, I think Dark Soul, the role playing game, should have had its own system. And somebody told me that that happened in Japan. They didn't make a tabletop role playing game of Dark Soul in Japan, but it never been translated. So if somebody can that speak Japanese can put his hand on that and translate it, that'd be nice. I'd like to have that. In the Dark Soul RPG here that I have, they use the 5e engine, but they did change it quite a bit. So like I said, my expectations were low, and they did better than I expected because it's not just a cheap clone. The one thing that they did that is a big change is that they replace hit point by position. And let's say hi to the hello Angar and hello insert name here. Let's say hi to the chat before I'm going into that because it's a bit complicated to explain. But okay, position is what replaces hit point. You get your base position at level 1, and that doesn't increase. It increases every level by your constitution modifier, but you don't roll any more dice. But at the start of a combat, you roll 1 position dice per level, so those are your hit dice, and those are added up as temporary hit point if you want, like temporary position for this fight. So, and a lot of the maneuver that you want to do, so you got a bit of this push your luck thing here because a lot of maneuver you want to do, you're gonna spend those position point. So they're both your hit point. If you're gonna get punished, you're gonna lose some position. But if you want to use some skill, or sometimes if you want to transform a miss into a hit, you're gonna spend some position. So in this one change, it does make the game feel like it bring a bit back this push your luck mechanic from Dark Soul. I'm not sure if the right way is. It's not the way I would have gone for, but I see at least they did make an effort. And for me, like this make the 5e system already more interesting than the classic 5e. So good on them for that. And those temporary positions that you roll for a fight, you lose them at the end of the fight. So if you had any temporary one left, they're gone. If you had spent all your temporary one and you were in your base position, then you stay there. You don't regain the lost position. So you can have like a injury that can linger from fight to fight. But every start of the fight, you're gonna get this new pool of temporary position. Also, one thing that they change, initiative. There's no linear initiative order. You do roll for initiative, but the only thing it determines is if you act before the monster or after the monster. So if you're a fast character or a slow character, and that's individual initiative. So everybody roll for it. But then if you're in the fast group, you play whenever before the monster. So if there's a few monster going on, they're all gonna go in the same time at the highest initiative the monster. But all the players that are in the fast group can play in whatever order they want before the monster, and all the player in the slow group are gonna play whenever they want after the monster. So I think that's also an interesting change. That doesn't really scream Dark Soul to me, but I think in itself it's an interesting mechanic that could be translated to different role-playing game. Hello, Flady, and hello, Nerdy Ogre. Nice seeing you. They also changed the spell list completely. The spell that they put like really fit what they like. They're straight up the spells from the video game. I'm not sure if they're all there. I really play with magic in Dark Soul. I never. Sometimes with some miracle, but they and they really copied like. But strangely enough, they copied because this game is really based on Dark Soul 3. The location, the monster, like there's some element from Dark Soul 1, but it's very like a Dark Soul 3 role-playing game. But the magic system, they went with the system from Dark Soul 1, where you have like you equip spell, those spell have attunement slot, and they have a number of usage per long rest or per time that you go to the bonfire. So that's what they did here. Instead of like in Dark Souls 3, you have FP, which I don't forgot what it stands for, but like they're basically like mana point or point to use like special action in your weapon. So I think that was weird that they are so deep into Dark Souls 3 that they went back to the magic system of Dark Souls 1, but I do prefer the magic system from Dark Souls 1, so I'm actually glad that they did that here, but I thought it was a weird choice. Also, weapon and armor is a big point in this game. Your weapons will allow you some maneuver. Almost all weapon will give you some extra maneuver that you can use, and usually you use them by spending position. So you spend some of your hit point to activate those maneuver, which I think is a good system. And that also emulates the game where every weapon got its own move set. So it does emulate the game to some extent. So again, I would give them a point there for that. And same thing with armor. The armor is going to again give you a feature. Weapon and armor all have strength requirement, but only strength requirement. Which this is kind of like a miss in my opinion, because in Dark Soul, a weapon can have like a strength requirement, dexterity requirement, fate requirement, intelligence requirement, whatever. I don't think there's anyone that have resistance requirement. But that doesn't matter because you're gonna boost your resistance to 99 first thing anyway. So that again, like that's a bit of a miss in my opinion. And also in Dark Soul, armor do damage reduction. Now because it's a D&D system, it's the AC system, so the damage armor makes you harder to hit. Again, not the right system for the game in my opinion. There, it doesn't make like it makes also like the naked build, where you dodge a lot and stuff like that, not as viable, which is the best way to play Dark Soul. Like you're naked, maybe you have some pants, and you swing a big sword around. That's what Dark Soul is about to me. But now it's kind of like really worth it to wear the armor. They replaced the race because you don't have race in Dark Soul by origin, which I think is a bit of a miss as well. You have like 4 origin, which are brute, fencer, jack of all trade, or caster. The origin determine your starting stats, so you don't roll for stat. You just pick an origin. You're gonna give you your stats. You never have, I think none of them have any negative modifier to any roll, so your stats are going to be pretty high. And also your origin determine the hit dice, or the position dice, I should say, that you're gonna roll, which is the big deal because you roll that at fucking beginning start of the combat, and it's your HP, and also what you use to activate your maneuver. And that's not determined by your class; it's determined by your origin. And the fact that origin determine both your stat and your HD and stuff like that, like if you want to play like a sorcerer, which is a class, well, you might as well play the caster. You know what I mean? It doesn't really make it a real choice. So I'm not too happy with that. And also, if you want to do like they made like deprive a class, but that should have been like the origin, probably instead of the jack of all trade. That should have been where the deprive belong if they want to go this route. But I think what would have been a better route to go would have been to have origins that are based on place we know from the game, like Astoria or the Great Marsh or Ulasil or the Boreal Valley, since that's like, get some origin. If you want to do the origin route, get some origin, some place that we know, some location that we heard about from the game. We don't know about those location, but we know those location exist. That could have been more interesting. Class, again, Dark Souls shouldn't be class based, but it's a D&D 5e engine, so it uses classes. You have class like sorcerer is one, pyromancer, knight, deprive is a class, and every class give you a feature every level. Like feature can be just like a little bonus here, a little bonus there. Sometimes you're gonna get a new skill that you can activate, and that's something that bothers me in the class as well. The way they're written down, there's a lot of useless repetition, and it becomes tedious to read. Just put that in once, that every character every character has 30 feet of movement speed. That doesn't change like in any class, but every class now repeats it. Every character have all weapon proficiency, all armor proficiency. Like basically just remove armor and weapon proficiency for your game. I know like they wanted to stick to the D&D 5e format so much that they had to repeat all those things every time. Just stop it. You're making your own thing now. You took some departure already. Get rid of weapon proficiency. Get rid of armor proficiency. Now it's all you're gonna be like make it with a strength requirement. All right, go with that. You don't have to repeat it every fucking time. And every class got an Estus flask. Just say it at the beginning of character creation. Every character got an Estus flask. Every character got 30 speed of movement. Now here's what the class give you, instead of repeating every time, because especially with the format, like then it's wasted space, it's wasted word. I find it annoying. It's a little nitpick, but in in also I want to say for people watching, I should have said in the beginning, I'm talking about the game. I'm gonna do a review. After that, after like the review part, I'm gonna talk about how I would run a Dark Soul inspired role-playing game. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss that. I think that's gonna be like an interesting part for you. But I think it's interesting to look at what this game has on offering. You gain level by spending souls, which is good. Souls are also used to buy stuff, which is perfect. You lose soul on death, which should be. So the soul that you didn't spend, so you don't if you spend the soul to buy something or to gain a level, you don't lose those. But every soul that you're caught that you didn't spend, you lose on death, which is good. But you don't have a soul run, which I can see that. That's a big part of Dark Soul, but it's kind of hard to translate in a role-playing game. It's a very gamey thing, video gamey thing. So the fact I didn't go that route, I'm not too mad about. When you die, you come back to a bonfire, and you just come back whenever. There's no real mechanic to it. And you come back to the nearest bonfire. They say if more than half the party, because like now it's a party-based game because it's a role-playing game, while Dark Souls is a solo experience. Now, if half the party die, then you failed, and basically you're all dead. But if just one guy died, then he just come back at the bonfire with his base position full and stuff like that. So he did lose his soul, but there's no real consequence other than that for dying. I think that could have been made a little more interesting. Oh, you do roll on an allowing table if you fail on a DC 18 wisdom check, which DC 18 is pretty high. But on the allowing table, there's only one option, one entry out of 20. That is, you go hollow, and then your character retired. The other one are mostly minor inconvenience, and some of them are actually benefits, which I think is all right. But I think this should have been they could have done more with that. long rest, because there you still have long rest and short rest because this is a 5e engine. Long rest or when you go to a bonfire, and which is all right. If you want to do Dark Soul with 5e, that's what should be done, I guess. But they kept the short rest that you can do a number of short rests between going to bonfire, and I think that's weak. Short rest should have been gotten rid of, and actually that should have been the Estus Flask mechanic. No more short rest, and instead of an Estus Flask just being an item that everybody get, just to say like, no, you have your Estus Flask that's built in your character. Taking a short rest is drinking a swig of your Estus Flask. You get rid of all the short rest otherwise, but they did keep the short rest. When you take a short rest, you regain half your base position, and again, now you're back to the game not being very deadly at all. Insert names in here. Say, I think one question here is: should Dark Soul TTRPG have permadeath or a designated point respawning? Well, that's like the whole gimmick of Dark Souls is that you're undead, and then you're gonna come back, and you're gonna come back, and you're gonna dying, but you keep coming back. You can't really die. So I think that having the respawn does work, but it's certainly challenging in a TTRPG context. So I think you would need to have like hollowing be much more like grinding you much more, becoming hollow slowly. I'll talk a little bit about it later. Another thing, they brought back the bloodied condition from D&D 4e, which that was a bit of a weird choice. So if your hit point or if your position, your base position is below 50%, then you gain some new ability that comes from your feature, from your class. It's a class feature that you have. When your position gets below 50%, you're bloodied, and now you can activate some more abilities. The monster and the boss are the same. For the boss, that works really well because Dark Souls is known for those bosses with the two phase, So now it represents that a bit, The bosses get bloodied, life below 50%. So now you got all those new maneuver it can do. So for the boss, I think it works. For the character, not so much. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. They have an encumbrance system that is a slot system, and you got only one armor slot, so your slot become as a whole kit. So no fashion soul of mixing and matching different armor type. You got one slot for the left hand weapon, one slot for the right hand weapon. Same thing with the ring, one left, one right. And in your backpack, you can have 15 items. I think that's a bit of a miss again, because swapping weapon in Dark Soul is a big deal. In Dark Soul, you can equip 2 weapons in each hand, and some people, not me, because I always like play with a light roll, so I have to equip very little, which is again something not considered at all here. But some people will swap weapon a lot during combat. I think, and the same thing with the item equipped in your quick access, which your Estus and other stuff. Some people will swap a lot in those. So the way they went with that, I think, kind of missed the mark. And also because there's no real consideration of if you're heavy load, medium load, or light load. With the that could have maybe the dex bonus, if you want to stick with 5e, maybe the dex bonus for your AC should have been much more important. Like especially if you're light load, you can add twice. I don't know. That could have been a way they went, but now they have like this slot system for equipment, which doesn't really add much. Doesn't really add to the flavor. So I don't know why they put that there, but they did. So yeah, magic system, I talked about it already. So that's about the system, what I wanted to cover. I'm gonna talk a bit about the book itself. One thing I want to say is that the art is way too dark, and trust me, like this look better in camera than it does in real life. Like the art is very dark and very, man. This one look great in camera. You can barely see anything in real life. It's so fucking dark, and the layout is kind of like mid. It's like they try to, I understand they try to pick a theme from the inventory system of the video game, the UI of the video game, which is not great. But bringing it back in a book, it's kind of boring. And all those like little icon there for the weapon, that's very boring. Give me some, like, put the effort on putting like some real drawing of those weapon. Like, man, it's kind of frustrating because now I show them in camera and they look much better than they look in in person. Maybe that's how they looked, like this one. Can you see something here? Like this in person, you can fucking see shit. And I remember, yeah, it's a lot of black ink. And I remember that. Look at this, like this. Fuck's sake, I cannot see shit there. Now the camera picks it up all nice. Man, all this part here on the paper, to me, that look like just black. There's no detail at all. I wish I could show you that better. Like, this is what it looked to me. This is closer to what I see when you look at the book. It's insane. And I remember having the... Oh, thank you for dropping by, Crap Phone. Have fun in your client meeting. I remember, like, in the board game that's made also by a SteamForged game, that I had the same problem. Art being too dark. Not enough contrast. So that's something that I and the layout, yeah, it's kind of mid. There's also a section promoting the X card. That's a big disappointment, especially when you Dark Soul. Like, you fucking get a Dark Soul game, you're gonna expect like some gruesomeness and some grittiness and like being a bit dark. It's fucking in the name, Dark Soul. You're not fucking playing a pony game, but they waste space with a fucking section about X card. So this book is trash, basically. Already, that's all I need to know. I should have opened with that, but I need the view time. And they also use the they pronoun for one character, but in the Dark Souls 3, it's a character that's always going to be the opposite gender of the player character, which is kind of base because it's a character you can get wed to in some kind of like very Dark Souls way. So you cannot get wed to the same sex character. So, but like they use they, but I don't know. They could have used he, which is like the gender neutral pronoun, or they could have used she because most player character are gonna be he, and then they're gonna make her a she. I think canonically she should be a she, but now decided to use they, which I found a bit annoying, to be honest. And they give some location description for your adventuring in the world of Lothric. They give some location description, and it feels much more like a Dark Souls source book than something useful for role-playing game. So this whole section was like, oh, okay, you know about the game, like, so let's have like they say like, oh, there's one bonfire there, and you can find those items, and there's those enemy, and you can roll for encounter there, and it's like that's not how role-playing games or run. Hey, hello Rick, nice seeing you. Oh, the dog is getting mad. Maybe there's a delivery coming. And a lot of it like is it's like it feels like they want you to play Dark Souls 3 by end. That's when I went to the Game Master section and the World section. That's That's how it fucking felt, you know. Like, and they include stuff like a character like oh, here's Patches, and you're supposed to do like what the soy face, like, oh, that's like I remember Patches is this trickster, you know, like it's fucking annoying, you know, like, and there's no direction on how to role play in Dark Soul, you know. Dark Soul is an action game. In Dark Soul, there's no normal life. So what do you do outside of fighting? And they give you like no indication of that at all. Like no fucking no fucking indication for role playing in this kind of setting is indicated. But that's not an easy question to answer. Like they want like should you just fucking stick to the plot of the video game? And now like this is the part when I talk about like how would I do a Dark Soul session or campaign? Like how do you role play in Dark Soul? Because like I said, there's no normal life. Everybody's mad. You always go from fight to fight to fight. Everybody exists there to be fought or to give you something on your way, and there's like you just keep moving on. So I think that's an important question to consider. And I think if you want to do a Dark Soul role playing game, you get to get the tone right. Getting the mechanics right would help a lot. But you shouldn't be doing one-to-one of the video game story. And you don't have to, because the world of Dark Soul is very expensive. 28mm say, Ong and Going Well Max, they are emulating the RPG as a CRPG. Like a tabletop RPG, yeah, it's really what they're doing. That X card sealed the deal for me, and it also suggests that they went with Origin rather than Race. Not that the game that used 5e to emulate Dark Souls sound good to begin with. Well, they went with Origin, but like there's no race in Dark Souls. Everybody's human, so I can excuse that for that. Mark Ackman said the games doesn't dwell on it, but seemingly the enemies and allies do in fact do stuff other than fight. Just the player doesn't participate. Yeah, but it's not exposed in the game. So I think if you do a role playing game, you should have a section about that, talking about that. You know, how do you role play in Dark Soul? Indeed, it's a solo existence. Yeah, we have indication, and there are faction and stuff in the game, and those faction have gold and stuff. Yeah. What are the abilities in the Dark Soul role playing game? In the tabletop role playing game, it's the basic D&D attributes. But in the video game, it's strength, dexterity, agility. Maybe it's agility, endurance, vitality, fate, resistance, and I'm missing some now on top of my head. I mentioned that at the top of the stream. Resistance and endurance. I think I got them all. Vitality, strength, agility, endurance, intelligence, fate, resistance. Those are the attributes in Dark Soul. But now they just went with the basic 6 that we all know from D&D. So yeah, if you want to roleplay in Dark Soul, get the tone right. If you can get the mechanics right, that would be a big plus, which I think it's kind of hit and miss here. They could have done worse. They could have done much better. Actually, if you look at the WinterDarn RPG, my own project, would play Dark Soul much better than what they did there. But I'm not gonna lie, Dark Soul was a big influence on me because I'm a big fan of the game. Don't just emulate the story from the role-playing game, and you don't have to because the world of Dark Soul is very expensive. There's many realms, there's many ages, so you can do a new story in a new cycle. The whole gimmick of Dark Soul is like there's this first flame, there's the Age of Fire, and at some point the Age of Fire draw to an end, and the flame is dwindling. It's gonna go dark soon. Are you gonna rekindle the flame, prolong that age, or are you gonna go let an age of dark coming up, right? And this cycle happened a lot of time. We know that from Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 really dwell on that, and even Dark Souls 3 as well. You know, we're not in the same cycle. Like the Lord of Cinder in Dark Souls 3, for those people that are familiar, or people that did kindle the flame in the past that are being brought back. So we know there's already been many cycles. So you want to set your game in one of those cycles that hasn't been explored with the video game. I think that would be the right way to do it. And don't do it just at the end of the cycle. Maybe you might want to start a little bit like when the flame is dwindling, but it's not right about to go dark. So it gives you some time to move, and it allows you to explore like how the societies, different society in this cycle, deal with the undead, because that's also the thing. Once you approach the age of dark, you got like the undead curse, where people cannot die; they just go hollow, and then at some point they keep coming back, but at some point they just become like mindless zombie joining about, or maybe being very aggressive. So and different society dealt with the undead in different way. Some of them send them to the undead asylum. Some of them build like specific settlement for them where they can be exiled and just like go past you undead day there. Some of them send them in the underground. So there's different like that's an interesting question. You have this world that got this cool problem. Like it's an interesting problem to explore. What if nobody would die? At some point they all become corpses, and at some like you can keep your sanity for a while, but sooner or later you're gonna go insane. You're gonna be a brain dead zombie walking around. You can put them in the ground because they're just gonna dig themselves up. So what do you do with those? Or, like, how do you deal with those dead? And then there are people that you knew too, so people can still like you don't want to be too harsh on them. Maybe you want to treat them with some dignity. Those are interesting questions. This is a place to role play. This is a big chunk of what you should explore when you do role play in a Dark Soul world. Um, Morakman mentioned there's different faction. That's a big part of a Dark Soul as well, and especially like different faction that's gonna deal with the people marked with the dark sign differently. Some people will want to promote the going to the Age of Dark. Some of them will gonna want to try to rekindle the flame. Some of them will want to do something with the undead. Some of them will want to do some other thing. Some of them will look for a curse. Some of them will look just to get rid of them. Some of them will want to bring those undead back to sanity. Some of them will want to shove them away or put them in a meat grinder. So different faction is very important, and dealing with those different factions. Even in the video game, you have those covenant, but that's a point. That's really a point that you ought to explore if you want to do a Dark Soul campaign. Different location that are built around bonfire, and that also can be like because you have like those different bonfire around where when you die you're gonna respawn to, and where you can offer humanity to burn humanity to regain sanity. You need to have a mechanic for that, in my opinion, because that's a big part of the Dark Soul world, and then you have to consider how you gain humanity. But you have to, and you have those settlements that are built around those bonfire, and now because the Age of Dark is coming, you're gonna see some of those settlements. Maybe the bonfire went out, or is about to go out. So now you have an element for role play as well, because people are like, what are you going to do with those? Can we find somebody to find a way to rekindle this fire? Can we relit it? Do we just move on? The bonfire is going out. What are we going to do? Are we going to die for good? Are we going to become hollow? Still be undead, but just go hollow? And every settlement should have a firekeeper. What if they lose their firekeeper? What if the firekeeper doesn't want to keep the fire anymore? Those are elements for role playing Dark Soul. So that you have to play with that. I would start the PC as human. but marked with the dark sign. So they're gonna be undead. They're gonna come back, but they haven't died yet. They're still human. In the video game, you start as undead, and you start with undead with kind of a blank slate, like I lost your memory and stuff like that. But I would start them as human, so you could have like those origins, stuff like that. And because a big thing in Dark Soul that is expressed to dialogue and stuff like that, if you pay the time to pay attention to it, is having a purpose is what prevents you from going hollow. And that should be every PC, every character should have a purpose, and that should be a big center of what the game is about. You try to accomplish something, you have this goal, and every PC should have one. They can keep it secret, they can share it. Maybe they have different purpose that works in opposition, maybe they works together. Some of them could be to find a curse to the dark soul, some of them could be to rekindle the flame, some of them could be to just to adventure or to use their undead as a gift. Some of them, but everybody should have a purpose that they chose for themselves. And failing at accomplishing your purpose is what is going to drive you hollow. Or even if you do accomplish your purpose and then you fail to find a new purpose, that's going to drive you hollow because you lack that is like the big center of what Dark Soul is about. You lack the motivation to push you forward, so you slowly go hollow. I know that I'm living that right now. So I would start a PC as human. Maybe they are sent on a mission to understand the undead curse. They or maybe they're trying to get rid of it for themselves, or maybe they are sent into exile because of the dark side, the dark sign. So that would be like a way to set the PC in the world that they have something to do other than just fight monster. Also, you should have like a corruption from the abyss as well. That also should be a theme that come back. The abyss and getting corrupted. Although the people with the dark souls, so human, are less likely to be corrupted, but like gods and giants and stuff like that are going to be corrupted, and demons. The people that have a soul that is not a dark soul are going to be corrupted. So maybe that doesn't affect the PC as much, but it could be something that we see in it could be something that we see in the world, like the abyss corruption going around. That's also another something to deal with. Although I think maybe Dark Souls 3 did retcon that now human can be corrupted by the abyss, because the abyss walker, I think, were human. And yeah, you should have dragon, you should have giants, you should have demons, you should have gods, or the remnant of gods that are not gone, primordial serpent, and undead. Those are also part of the faction that you want to have. Bring back the primordial serpent that try to guide the character to do some stuff. Every time someone die, shouldn't just be like a chance. Like there's always something that they lose a bit. They should have a chance to. They should get closer to becoming hollow. So that's losing a bit of sanity, losing some memory, losing a part of themselves. Having this purpose that keep them going, but as you hollow, everything around this purpose is lost. Your personality, your memory, and stuff like that. And now you become obsessed with this purpose, and you become like kind of like you become laser focused on that. At some point, that if it's cut from under you, then you go hollow. Or once you achieve it, then you just like drift aimlessly, not knowing what to do anymore. I think that should be a big part of the game. And also, the PC are not chosen one. Like people often talk about the chosen undead and stuff like that. In the first game, the chosen undead is not chosen. What makes it chosen is that he accomplished those steps of those prophecy. So I've prophecy in the game. The prophecy are not about the PC at first, but as the PC accomplish some step of those prophecy, then the world start to react and say, "Oh, you're the chosen one." But there's no fate, because that's also a big lesson of Dark Soul. There's no fate but what you do. Uh, like the world doesn't bend over for the chosen undead in the first Dark Soul until it did have some accomplishment. It did rank the 2 bell. It did go to Sven Fortress. Then the world start to notice and they say, "Oh, you're the chosen undead." But the prophecy just say at some point there's going to be an undead that's going to do that. There's a chosen undead, but to become chosen, you have to do the work. It's not given to you, and I think that's also something that could be a role play element in Dark Soul. Rick said, then you should be able to use the attribute checks for typical roleplay situation. I'm fisted. Yeah, like, well, what I'm saying is like, because like Dark Souls is such like a fighting an action oriented game, it's you don't have like those you don't really interact. Like, you don't have a dialogue wig. You can talk to NPC, but they just talk to you. You never talk back. You don't have dialogue choice or anything like that, and you don't even have to talk to the NPC. The story, like, it's the narrative in Dark Soul is very in the background. You interact with it if you want, but it's very much an action game. You can play like the old game like without being interrupted by cinematics. You're not being told the story in Dark Soul. There's a story there. You can look for it, but it's not spoon fed to you. So that's why like a lot of time I say like it's not quite evident how you would role play in Dark Soul, because your character is got no personality whatsoever, and everybody's insane. Morakman said, "Do a story exploring whatever the world was like when that six-headed dragon was young." I think, yeah, you could, but like I think like, or just like maybe you want to do like just before. But I would, to be honest, I would go like stay away from any specific world that has been depicted in a video game. I would do my own world, and like this is like one of the cycle. This is one of the cycle in this repeating cycle of like Age of Light, Age of Dark, Age of Light, Age of Dark. Dead and insane NPC them. Yeah, well, that should happen with your character at some point. When you go hollow, you become an NPC. You lost your purpose and stuff like that. You're not gonna die, but that's basically how you die in that setting. You become hollow. You lost who you are. You don't have a reason to go on anymore. So you're just gone. Your spirit, your body is still moving around, but your spirit is gone. Markman says some game like the genre DO, in fact, have a sanity stat, go insane, and it's game over. Yeah, like in the genre DO, do in fact have a sanity. I don't know why I said DO, because you put it in caps. Some game in the genre do have in fact a sanity stat. Well, that's what it is as well. So that's something that could have been lifted from there. Maybe Call of Cthulhu. The Call of Cthulhu system could have been a better match for Dark Soul. That's something I could have considered. If you want to keep it very simple, you could attach sanity to wisdom. But again, why stick with fucking 5e? It's not a good match. Just like our D&D, the D&D system in itself. Like, yeah, maybe the Call of Cthulhu system would have been better. Maybe. But I think it should have been like something a little more... they should have like made... Like, it would have deserved its own system. But of course, that's more work. And we know how people feel about work. Dark Souls does occasionally have attribute check, actually. Well, they mostly check the... Dark Souls doesn't have attribute check. It check the skill of the player. Fate is the final conclusion of all your life decision. Yeah. Well, you can look it backward like that, You look back at your fate, and that's what you're fated to do. Were you? Choice define you? Those are interesting questions as well. The story is more of what you create as you play with the plot of the world. Yeah, that's why I think we should go with we shouldn't try to... We should go with a different cycle, not go... So we can keep the tone, we can keep the general like big line, but with the undead curse and stuff like that. but we're not bound to, oh, now you're fighting the two princes that refused to kindle the flame. Oh, now you have like Pontiff Sullivan that did all those things. You know what I mean? Just like get away with of that. So you leave the room for the GM to make his own world, his own like, and for the group to make their own story, and you can discover the story together as a group instead of just like reenacting. When you start to emulate a video game, now you're becoming like you become like much more railroady in a way, and you become like almost like scripted. So I think that's a big mistake that they made. Keep the beat, keep the like the main, keep the identity of the setting, but but make it your own by going into this different setting. So I agree with you on that. You don't have the invisible wall, more like Elden Ring. Um, Even in Elden Ring, like they have like this. Elden Ring is much more story driven as well. You could do like Elden Ring, like most of what I said here for Dark Soul would apply, but they don't have this. I think Dark Soul works good because they have this cycle idea built in, so you can just like go anytime in the cycle. You could even do like, oh, the Age of Dark just ended, or maybe you want to do the fire just went dark, and now what happened in the Age of Dark? That's something we don't know. We don't know what happened in the Age of Dark. Is there life? Or like people say like, oh, because you have Dark Soul, the Age of Dark is actually the Age of Man. So now are you just becoming like in a normal fantasy world, in a normal medieval fantasy world? Um, because like the Age of Light is the Age of Gods, the Age of Dark is the Age of Man. Maybe then the fantasy just die and it's just human. Maybe that's not a good idea to do. But there's question there to be answered. I think Dark Soul offers you a lot of those. And maybe I'm not just as deep into the lore of Elden Ring as well. It didn't catch me up as much as Dark Soul caught me up. In Dark Soul, the antagonist should be exhaust of a previous stage. Well, we know like a lot of the antagonists are like those gods that want to preserve the Age of Light. They are those, or some of them want to end it. They also have different goal. And there's the dragon, the demons which are like created by the gods with the fake flame when they try to emulate the flame. Does the Age of Fire really represent life, or is it a curse on the world? Well, the Age of Fire was the age of the gods, and where they were running everything. But now the gods are mostly gone, and the Age of Dark, like Gwen sacrificed himself to preserve the Age of Fire, but now is hollow. So, and that's what caused the undead curse, if I remember correctly. I'm not the most like deep into the lore. Like it's been a while since I looked at it, but there's like, and I don't think like Dark Soul doesn't give you clear answer as well. And I think that's what could make it very interesting for a role playing game, because you can make your own answer. You can explore those questions. Like, is it worth it? I always think like when I play it, I always think like the right ending is to bring the Age of Dark. I don't kindle the flame after killing Gwyn. I just walk away. That's I did it once, like, but then I usually walk away. I think that's the right answer. But different people can have their own answer. They're always a fallen knight, yeah. The Age of Aquarius. That's where we are now in this world. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. I think the Dark Soul TTRPG. Well, already they do have this section about the X card, so it's trash. But other than that, if that doesn't bother you, I think it's a big missed opportunity. I think they could have done much worse with it, because they did change this D&D 5e engine significantly. That does make it a more interesting game. But if they had made their own system, then they could have made like a great game. But instead they tried to go with, I guess, what's popular or what was easy or something. I don't know exactly what the motivation was. But yeah, that's what I would call it, a big missed opportunity. Would I call it cash grab? I'm not sure I would, because like they could have done much worse, but they could have done so much better. Even in the art of the book, even in the layout of the book, the presentation could have been much more interesting. The system, they have some miss here and there, some serious one. The first one being sticking to 5e, and I think it would be possible to role play in Dark Soul, in the Dark Soul world. I think the main idea you would have, I think the biggest thing would be to explore this different cycle where the flame is dwindling, the first flame is dwindling, and how different society explore that. I think that would be like what is interesting. Like now you have different faction that want to deal with those different things. How do they deal with the undead? That would be where the meat of this game would be. I think that's what should be. If you want to do a Dark Souls game, that's what should it be. And remember what Dark Souls is about. It's about having like you go hollow when you don't have a purpose anymore. It's about keeping pushing forward. You hit your head against the wall, but you keep going at it until you are fed up. You are defeated. Your moral is down. So insert that in your game. Rick say, I like us trying to understand what it's like 6,000 years ago. We have glimpse on the stone wall. We really don't know because we can't experience our ancient past. Yeah, and it's so different. It's so alien. Yeah, they should have went with their own system. Absolutely. Personally, wouldn't run a Dark Soul game. It's missing too many social elements as a setting to appeal to most people. Solitude and madness that prevent any really outside connection is a hard player still. Yeah, that's why I say you should go a little sooner in the cycle when the undead curse is there, but it hasn't then been there for that long. So people are starting to come back as undead. Some people know what it is. Most don't know what it is. So there's like those social element about understanding it. The bonfire that have been lit in the community forever. Now they're starting to go to dwindle and to go dark. So there's this question to answer that. And if you're in your own cycle, you can see like how the different society deal with those undead curse. I think you like I agree with you at first. Like my first to say Dark Soul, I love Dark Soul. Weird choice for a playing game because there's not many social element. But I think when you think a bit about it and you look at the tone and the world in general of the game, I think those social elements can be brought back uh, quite a bit. Yeah, I think there's actually enough interesting question to answer that there's a lot of room for those social element. I wouldn't want them in the video game though. I like the video game because the fucking narrative gets out of the way. I'm not being told a story. I want to play a game. I'm playing a game. The game is just there. Co-op is basically supposed to be very limited. It's essentially a brush with another silent stranger in order to maintain the tone of the setting. Yeah, it's also like those parallel world that overlap. I wouldn't use the co-op line. I wouldn't do the summon for fight as well, but maybe having a mechanics to bring back NPC that you encountered, like that could be a good thing, but you have to make it like manageable for the GM. But anyway, those are my idea on how to run a Dark Soul game and my view on the Dark Soul RPG by SteamForged game. I hope that was interesting for you guys, and I hope it was useful to some of you. Maybe it gave you some idea maybe that's something that you've been trying to get this feel right. And if SteamForged want to give me a call, I'm available. Take care, guys. Have a good day, and thank you for joining. And thank you to the people that are gonna watch later. Take care. Have a good day. See you next time.